What's up everybody, and welcome to another episode of Something Amazing. In this week's episode we're going to be revisiting the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and views about this phone and share my experience with this phone over the last 6 months. Let's get into it. Okay, so jumping straight in, I have this S10 Plus for a little over 6 months now. I had got mine in May. We actually have two S10 Plus phones in our household. The second one belongs to my partner, and we had actually got that at the launch when they became available here in South Africa around March. So let me get into what I dislike about this phone. Firstly is the placement of the power button. I have relatively large hands, and it's still a struggle to reach for that power button, especially for one-handed use. I found myself using this phone a lot with two hands. The main reason being, a lot of people have gotten used to the so-called chicken feet grip, and I used to also have that chicken feet grip when using my S9 Plus, but on the S10 Plus, because of the position of the power button or the unlock button, it became really difficult to reach it. The phone doesn't feel very stable in your hands, and I always have this fear that I'm going to drop it. So even 6 months later, I thought that I may get used to it. But I still find myself using both hands just so that I have some stability when holding this phone. And like I said, I have pretty large hands, so I think a lot of people would have difficulty in one-handed operation of this phone. The second thing is the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. Now, if I have to sum up how good this is, there's a very good local Afrikaans word, and basically it's kak. I have no idea why Samsung chose to put this in. There have been a few software updates regarding the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor specifically, but still it doesn't work well. I've used obviously multiple profiles. I've set 4 fingerprint profiles on the same finger, and we can actually test it out. So I'm going to try and unlock it. Wow, okay, it worked. Murphy's Law. But majority of the time I have to press this around 2 or 3 times, and I've found that it's not as quick and not as responsive as the optical sensor that was on the Samsung S9 Plus. And the main reason for that is it takes some time to unlock it, and I always find myself either using the facial recognition unlock technology, which isn't the safest, or I most of the time draw in the pattern to unlock the screen. In my experience, I found that it does work well if your finger is wet. So I'm not entirely sure what the design behind that was. So in my experience, it seems to work better when my finger is wet. I got used to using the back optical sensor that was on the S9 Plus. It was very easy to reach. A lot of people obviously had complained that now your finger ends up touching the camera lens a lot and it smudges. But using that phone for over a year, I found that with muscle memory, etc., I would reach on that specific spot 99% of the time, and the unlock unlock technology of the optical sensor was way more efficient and way more faster than the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. And come to think of it, like, you know, I don't know who Samsung has been marketing or targeting with this. I don't know whether it's the toddler market. Now, must I walk around sucking my thumb the entire time? And it would make sense because of the amount of emphasis they put on playing Fortnite on this device. So Fortnite and sucking your thumbs, this phone works well. Another thing about it is a positive. Let's jump to a positive. A positive about it is the gaming side of things. This phone is packed with powerful hardware. We covered a lot of that in our unboxing video, highlighting the specifications of this phone, and if you didn't check it out, I'll put a link to that in the description box below. Games run effortlessly and smoothly on this, and something that most people don't cover in their videos that I've seen is actually the cooling system of this phone. When I had the S7, Samsung S7, playing games on that phone, as you know, the S7 was plagued with that exploding batteries on the S7 Edge, but they did have a problem with batteries across the board. And I'm not sure if it's a problem with the battery per se, or if it's more specific towards gaming on that phone and heat distribution within that phone, because I had the S7 for just over 3 years and I had no issues with it. And then obviously I changed to I started playing PUBG like after 4 years of having that phone. And once playing PUBG Mobile on that phone, the battery on that phone had actually expanded and pushed the back cover off. On the S9 Plus, when I used to play games on that, the phone would actually get pretty hot in my hands. But I've never experienced that issue on the S10 Plus. This phone has stayed cool right throughout. Just also on the battery side of things, this battery is excellent. I've never had to charge this battery. I've had experiences where obviously I've been on the road and I've not been on my phone as much. This battery has lasted 2 days without breaking a sweat. But on average, from a full charge waking up in the morning, this battery would only alert me that it needs a recharge around midnight, around 1 in the morning. So most of the times when I'm going to bed around midnight, this phone doesn't need to be recharged throughout the day. I would consider myself an average user, but if you're a heavy user, you would still get good battery life. Okay, the next thing is we should actually talk about the software on this phone. The Samsung uses the Samsung One UI software, which is Android based, and it works seamlessly. 6 months down the line, this thing is smooth as hell. I've never experienced any lagging or the phone freezing. I don't even remember restarting the phone during the day. I think I've only restarted this phone probably when there's been software updates or when the battery has died, which has been very rare. But I've never found myself restarting this phone because an app freezed up or a game didn't work, etc. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM. The desktop in the back started off with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it's actually ridiculous to think that they have that much of memory within this device. On the memory side of things, this has expandable memory up to 512 gigabytes. I have actually the 128 gigabyte model, and I have a 128 gig SD card. That memory is still more than sufficient, so I never found myself running out of space or memory yet as well. With regards to the screen itself, this is one of the best screens on the market, and I don't know how to explain or emphasize how good the screen is. Firstly, I don't know why Samsung does this, but when you get the phone out of the box, it's actually in full HD, and you have to go into settings and go into the display settings to change it to 4K or WQHD+. Samsung screens have been amazing. I remember when my S9 Plus phone had got stolen, I went back to the S7, and wow, going back 2 generations, I felt myself struggling to look at the screen. It's that good, and that's something I think most people don't realize. You only realize how good this phone screen is once you've actually used it. And do yourself a favor, next time you're passing a Samsung store, just go in and compare it next to your phone and you'll see the bright colors, etc. And most people would think, I can live without that. But once you've used this phone, you can't go back to any other screen. A good friend of mine, DJ Jalutz as well, he also had a S10 Plus, and unfortunately his phone had also got stolen in June, and he went back to his S9 Plus, and he tells me he misses the S10 Plus screen so much. It's something that, like I say, you don't notice it until you don't have it in your hands anymore, and the screen is probably the best on the market. And if you have to get this phone for any reason, you would get it for the screen. Viewing videos, watching movies, playing games, even taking photos and seeing your pictures, etc. on the screen is that good. So Samsung really did something amazing here with this screen on this phone, and there's nothing out there on the market that actually compares to it. I actually wanted to, we never put out a video on this phone because I actually wanted to do a comparison with another phone, and then the phone in particular was the Huawei P30 Pro, and the reason I wanted to do it was it obviously was a big competitor to the S10 Plus and they both had come out around a similar time earlier this year. However, I did reach out to Huawei, and I was met with shut doors. Actually, they never even responded. But I just wanted to do a review video. I've been a big Samsung fan, and you've seen a lot of these products. Obviously, they're not sponsored. We do purchase them, and we've covered a lot of Samsung products on this channel before. The Huawei, I did have the opportunity of playing with one. It actually belongs to a friend of mine, but due to certain reasons, because, let me just say, he works for Huawei. So I couldn't showcase that phone or do comparison with his phone because he's employed by them. But I did, when we were away, I did check out the phone side by side. I don't know if I would give up the Samsung for the Huawei. Let me just say it that way. It is a great phone as well, but I'll cover more of that when we get to talking about the camera itself. The one downside to this phone, and it also has been a big selling point of the phone, is the size of this phone. It's actually an extremely large phone. I find it difficult, or it barely fits. Let's just say it barely fits in most jean pockets, unless you got one of those deep jean pockets that go halfway down your thigh, but then you got this constant bulge on your thigh the entire day when you're walking around, and just looks like you're walking around happy.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And it's, let's just be honest, we live in South Africa.
This is America. Don't catch you slipping now.
You would be crazy to walk around with a phone in your hand the entire time. You are asking to be robbed. Phones are high commodity for theft in South Africa. Most people have had their cell phone stolen, and this, if you ever got an insurance quote on a new cell phone, it's absolutely absurd, because it's just as good as going and buying another contract. So most people don't even insure their mobile devices. Let's get to the main highlight of this phone, or the main reason people buy cell phones these days, is what cameras these phones have. And the S10 Plus, I was a bit skeptical. Listen, the S9 Plus blew my mind away, obviously with the dual camera in the rear, and obviously the one camera having the dual aperture. But I was a bit skeptical about the ultra wide lens, and let me tell you something, it's something that grew on me. I actually can't imagine going around now without using the ultra wide lens. It's that good. And I did compare the ultra wide lens on this phone compared to the Huawei. This is actually wider and it's more clear. And Samsung did a great thing also with the camera. They didn't just leave the phone as it is when it came out in March or when it was announced in February. There have been software updates. So they added a night mode. I think it was around June. And last month in October, the software update that came out for this phone, you now have live focus video, which is brilliant. The face tracking thing on that live focus video is actually out of this world. It's almost as good as a dual pixel autofocus on the Canon camera that I'm using to shoot this episode with. And I've gotten used to using a lot of the features like the live focus photos. The live focus photos have always, I didn't like it on the S9 Plus that much, and the main reason for that is a lot of people do live focus photos because of the bokeh or bokeh, no matter how you pronounce it, but basically to gain depth of field, where you get that blurred background. And the problem always with the mobile bokeh was that you would get the bokeh in the background but not in the foreground. And on the S10 Plus, it doesn't allow you actually to have much of a foreground because you have to be a certain distance away so that it does pick up your face so that it can focus on your face or an object. But when you do take photos at a certain angle, it does tend to blur out the front a little better than the S9 Plus. It's certainly not going to replace your DSLR or mirrorless cameras at this point, but it's taking a step in the right direction. With regards to the cameras themselves, they do tend to work extremely well. And a lot of people, especially my friends that I've always have said, yeah, but it's only a 12 megapixel. Now, let's just do a school lesson here. Good day, class, and today we're going to be talking about megapixels. You basically have a camera sensor, and on your camera sensor there are pixels. These megapixels are what actually traps and captures light that passes through the lens onto the sensor. If you have a 12 megapixel sensor, it means there are 4 rows of 4 pixels each that are capturing light. And if you have 40 megapixels, it means that there are 40 pixels on the single sensor. The one thing that has always been a concern is these camera openings, even though it's a f1.5. So f-stop basically refers to how wide or the aperture of the opening of the lens that allows light through to the sensor. So this has an f-stop of 1.5, and this is a Canon 50mm lens that has an f-stop of 1.8. But the opening of this lens is much larger than the opening of that lens. In comparison, it's about half the size of this phone. And the reason is f-stop is actually a fraction, and it relates to, if I can just sum it up quickly, it relates to focal length and also the size of the lens and the size of the sensor. So it's actually a fraction. Obviously, the lower the f-stop number, the more light it's going to get towards that sensor. However, the openings on these lenses and these sensors are very small on these cameras. So always the concern is, will enough light pass through? Because if you got a 12 megapixel camera, each one of those pixels has to be adequately exposed to light. If you got a 40 megapixel camera, all 40 pixels have to be exposed adequately. And it's not something you're actually going to notice on your phone when you're viewing a picture or a video on your phone, or you're viewing Facebook or Instagram, etc. on your phone. But it's something that you're going to see if you open it up on your PC and you start zooming into that image, or if you decide you've taken a nice picture and you want to enlarge this and you want to print it out. You may see spots where it will be underexposed. So the concern always was, do you actually need more than 12? 12 seems to be a good number. The reason being is you're going to ensure that each one of those pixels are adequately exposed by the amount of light that actually enters the sensor. I love the camera on the Samsung S10 Plus. I actually shot a video in June, and I'll play a snippet of that towards the end of this video, just so you could see some of the features of the S10 Plus. Did some wide angle shots, live focus shots, and normal camera shots as well. Overall, I actually love this phone. I'm not gonna lie, but it didn't blow my mind as much as the S9 Plus did. There have been vast improvements in terms of the hardware in this phone. There have been vast improvements in terms of the software within this phone compared to the S9 Plus. But moving to the S9 Plus, it really took my breath away, and I didn't have that same experience with the S10 Plus. It's still a great phone. They are selling at a remarkable price right now. I think I saw it selling as low as 6,000, 7,000 and discount when compared to the original price when it came out in March. And Black Friday is around the corner, so you're going to get some good deals on these phones. Christmas is around the corner. These should sell for an awesome price, and it's usually the time of the year where people are looking gifts for themselves or for others, and phones is always a hot commodity. A downside of this phone, I did mention that within the hardware of this phone, they do have a much thicker copper pipe. The cooling and the efficiencies and the thermals of this phone is a lot better compared to the previous models. Another thing with these phones, if you look at the Samsung phones a few generations back, even as well with the S9 Plus, they moved over to the Type-C connector in these phones, which is extremely fast for data transfer, extremely fast for charging the phone, etc. But the USB Type-C connectors, sometimes they do erode with time, and you have to be careful. Like with any connector, you can actually break the pins within this. The problem with the S10 Plus is that the USB-C connector is actually soldered to the entire motherboard of the phone. So there is no replacement for this. On the S9 Plus and the S8 Plus, these were modular, so you could get replacement parts for them and replace the mic or the USB Type-C. Now all the components at the bottom of the phone are part of the motherboard. So be sure, with regards to the screen and the hardware issues that may arise with this phone, Samsung has a Samsung Care option which lasts for 2 years. I'm not sure if it's still available, but like when this phone came out, they were selling it, I think, for about $500. It was on special for 2 years, and I actually taken out the Samsung Care Plus plan on both the phones for that reason specifically, because you don't want to be stuck in a situation where everything is this comes complete with the motherboard. So you have to replace the entire motherboard on this phone, and that cost you may just as well buy a new phone. So you don't want to be stuck in that situation. So if you have a Samsung Care option and it's covered under that warranty, they should replace that, because that's a manufacturing default. It's not your fault. And one of the best things about this phone, it still has an auxiliary port or headphone jack, a 3.5mm jack. On the Note 10, Samsung, I don't know why you're moving in the direction of Apple.
No! God, please, no! No!
You are now alienating your people at parties. You will never have a turn on the aux cable. You will never have that opportunity to talk to somebody. Nobody goes up to anybody, by the way. Nobody goes up to anybody at a party and say, hey, what's that phone you're holding in your hand? If you're a stranger, I'm thinking, oh, dude, you're just trying to steal my phone. But if I'm playing music, it's always the center of attention, because people want to come and say, oh, what track is it? And then they check out your phone and they'll be like, hey, what phone is this?
My nigga.
I know it sounds stupid, but at parties you are alienating and ruining the social status of your customers. This phone, obviously, it's still a great phone, it's still a great buy. But my advice to Samsung, obviously when this phone came out, there was also pictures of a 5G variant which had the power button in the correct placement, FYI. And it had the time of flight camera sensor, which they obviously introduced in the Note 10, and the TOF sensor was obviously there with the Huawei cameras on the Huawei P30 Pro. Samsung has this habit of launching a lot of products in here. You got the S10 series, you got the Note series, they now got the Galaxy Fold. Obviously the first launch of that was a flop, and now they've relaunched it. And you got the A series, etc. Samsung, let me get real with you. Take all those resources, because obviously you save a highlight for a certain model. Take all of them and package them into one product. Take a page from Apple. Listen, at the end of the day, right? Some people say you should have variety because that's what people are going to buy, right? But if you look at Apple phones, right, they're extremely expensive, right? But they come out with one product line. And people will, if they like something that good, they will get it. Some of the brokest people I know always have the latest Apple phones.
Shut up and take my money.
And people will, if they want something bad enough, they're going to save up for it and they're going to get it. Especially when it comes to mobile phones, because it's such a big part of our daily lives. We do everything on our phones, on our smartphones these days, from banking to checking social media to communicating with friends and families. We're always on them, to Googling things that we may not know, etc. It's just become a part of every person out there. So if you package everything, all those features, time of flight sensor, live focus video, blah 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 blah, everything into one unit, I think it's going to sell a lot better. I'd be much more happier as a customer, and I think a lot of other people out there would also say, hey man, this thing is knocking everything out of the water, so we should definitely get one of these. Yeah, it's still a great phone though. It's still reasonably priced. Like I say, it's probably going to get cheaper. It's really a good buy. The features are phenomenal. The screen is phenomenal. I'd actually like to check the Galaxy Fold out. That screen looks amazing. But you know, we're out of budget this year. We bought 2 of these S10 Plus phones. So Samsung South Africa, do the right thing.
Be a man, do the right thing.
And send us one. I'd love to check one out. And just to cover some of the highlights of this camera, I didn't do a full camera testing video on this. However, I did use it, like I said, when I went on holiday in July with my mom. And here's a small snippet to end off this video of that holiday, and it highlights a lot of the camera features on the S10 Plus. If you'd like to check out the entire video, I will link that in the description box down below. And yeah, we'll check you in the next one.
شارك الغي في سما دبي، كانت تبغي تشوف الناس في جنة. سلموا حي حاكم دبي محمد اللي مديم للعلا فنه. شارك الغي في سما دبي، كان تبغي تشوف الناس في جنة. سلموا حي حاكم دبي محمد اللي مديم للعلا فن.
شارك الغيب في سما دبي، كانت تبغي تشوف الناس في جنة. سلموا حي حاكم دبي محمد اللي مديم للعلا